here with the cast of Birth, Rebirth. I'm so excited to have you guys here. Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
This is one of the most naturalistic horror movies I've ever seen. And I will say one of the saddest horror movies I've ever seen as well. I was thinking about it for days afterward. I mean, Laura, to start with you, how did this idea come about?
Well, you know, it's not a Frankenstein, literal Frankenstein adaptation, but it's really Frankenstein inspired. And so, you know, I've been thinking about this story in one form or another since I first read that book as a teenager. And knowing that Mary Shelley wrote it and knowing a little bit about her life, it felt really natural to me that the doctor should be a woman, and that issues of creating life and the physical complications of that, you know, that those really needed to be tied together. So, yeah, I've been thinking about this for a few decades now, and with every decade, the meaning of the story has changed for me.
I mean, Judy, your character is a grieving mom who loses her daughter, who's 6 years old. And ultimately, the story is about how far, you know, love can drive you to do things that can be really horrible. And the headspace, I mean, but at the same time, it's so relatable what she's going through. How did you find that emotionality, that core to relate to her?
It's relatable to me. I have a 13-year-old. And instantly when I read the script, it made sense. I didn't think of it or see it as a horror film. I thought it was like a heavy drama. And I responded to it immediately. In that regard, it felt, that headspace felt much more accessible, you know, and I don't know that there's nothing I wouldn't do for my kid, you know, so that made sense to me. And I think it begins from there, and then it gets, you know, you weave it, you complicate it, you find the nuances, the darknesses, there's no right answer or real answer to where you would go to make something happen for something you love, whether it's for them or for yourself.
And Breeda, your character is caught up in this whole story that she's unaware is even happening around her. You know, how did you go about like playing this character who is a victim ultimately, but, you know, finding the dimension, you know, and basically not portraying her in like sort of a haunted way with a dark destiny awaiting her? How did you find who she would be?
Man, can I just talk about the movie with spoiler alerts? I'm like, I don't want to spoiler alert anything. I think that the feeling of possibly dying in childbirth when you make a decision to have a kid is a terror that creeps in every doctor's visit. The whether the child's going to survive or whether you're going to survive is, when you're a mom going through that, is a lurk. It's the elephant in the room. You're dealing with life and death in that way when you endeavor into making humans. And we all got here because somebody's mom was like, I'm going to look that horror right in the face. Like your mom was like, had that same terror about you at some point. You know, everybody's mom, that's why moms are so insane. Like, because keeping someone alive and yourself alive and then everyone alive around you. And then, which is what's so beautiful about this story, is because this is as much a story about birth and motherhood as it is about death. And, you know, one of the horror of this film for me is that Judy's character can't allow for death. Death is not an option in her, you know, and that the terror in that option, that there's something scarier than death. That there's a morality that's harder than death is you know, like keeping someone alive. Yeah, which is where, you know, and it's such the exploration of motherhood through like in Marin's character, it's almost like a rejection of motherhood that then results in like this incredible, like the path to motherhood for these two characters is incredible. But, you know, I've thought about having another kid, and the scariest thing to me is dying in like, you know, the Spartans used to, like, you could only get a gravestone if you died in childbirth. Like, this is a topic that women have been dealing with. Dying in childbirth. I'm reading too much. Yeah, I know.
In 1335, the vaginal canal was actually twine.
No, I was so scared to do this movie, so scared, and they made a body cast like of me, and the worst way I could ever die happens in this movie, and I wanted to exorcise the demons through art by doing it. And I said, thinking about doing this movie makes me want to barf. And then I said, I was like, I have to do this movie. Like
it should be on that should be the
thinking
headline.
about this movie made me want to barf.
Put on your headstone.
Yeah.
As you died in childbirth.
Basically, I just wanted a Spartan headstone, so I did this movie. But like, I'm sitting on set, and the scariest thing that I could think to do, which is have like an emergency C-section that goes wrong, there were women in the room who had done that. There was crew who had experienced that. There was people in the room who, while I was there in this cast, were like, let me tell you about my experience. And I was like, this movie is how movies need to be made. This is how, like, you just take everyone's deepest, darkest fears and childbirth, of course, has a taboo around it, so nobody talks about how scary it is and how frightening it is.
Mm-hmm. The movie is so affecting because it does tap into very real things. I mean, I can even relate it to my own life. I was very sick as a child and as a teenager, and I could imagine my own mom, going to some lengths. And I will say, Marin, with your character, she seems extreme, and certainly what she does is extreme.
I don't know what you mean by that.
But as a portrayal of a doctor, her personality is not that far afield from many of the doctors that I've known in my life.
And she works. Let's be honest. She's a morgue technician. I mean, she's not necessarily. She didn't choose a public-facing area of expertise for a reason. I think she knows herself well enough. No, I feel like Laura and I talked a lot in kind of pre-production time about like kind of constructing, making sure we were on the same page about Rose's kind of universe and Rose's worldview and how Rose's mind works. It is very unique. It felt startlingly, I think, not that far sometimes from my own and from Laura's. We definitely bonded out and be like, this makes sense to me. I don't, but I think we both also relate, if I can speak for me and Laura, when we had those conversations, we both related to something that feels like, devoting your life to something that feels bigger than you, and that feeling single-minded. And that's definitely real. She believes that this is the most important thing. This isn't about her own fame. This is about something that could help other people down the road and change the world. I mean, this is something we talked a lot about. Rosalind Franklin, who was a pioneering scientist who was basically erased from history. That's who Rose is named after. Rosalind Gasper, my character, is named after this woman, Rosalind Franklin. And she was a pioneer who kind of was in a bad mood all the time and was not the easiest to work with back in the day and got basically erased, but like discovered DNA. So, we were like, well, I think this is a story as old as time. You know what I mean? Like women like this who were very single-minded and extremely dedicated and not maybe the easiest to work with, and still considered still difficult women are often kind of left on the sidelines a little bit and erased. Mm-hmm. But I also, I don't have children, but I have my own complicated history with, IVF stuff and complications and all kinds of things. And it is something that we don't often discuss publicly for no other reason than that the female reproductive system is something that widely feels like it should be a secret.
It makes men uncomfortable.
Yeah. And even a lot of women don't talk about it with other women often unless it comes up. I found myself when I wanted to discuss these things, other women being like, oh, I did that. And I was like, I never knew how many friends I had that went through certain things. Yeah. And it is just something that we aren't comfortable with bringing it out into the open. And it felt like something that just even those elements that Rose experiences in the movie, I remember thinking like, these are all things that people, there are elements of kind of the horror of living in this body and feeling like it should be secret or it's scary or it's mysterious or all of those things that the movie touches on so many things that I hope people feel sort of seen in some way. And
the science versus the medicine, right? Where women who are scientists, for example, are dismissed. Women who rear children are embraced under your circumstances, and the complications between those things, where even with our personal experience as being parents, we connect so much to that. It's two different things. You know? So dismissive from them. You're not a mother. You don't know. And we're like, you know, you're not a doctor. You don't know. You
And
know,
I am a
and
doctor,
yeah.
and so I do know.
Yeah. You know,
You guys
no, but I
didn't know
mean,
that
and I
until
mean
today.
it within the film
yeah,
as well. You know, and how we can bring those kind of an authentic, open conversation in a room that's extremely diverse, full of women, full of queer, full of women of color, people of color, is an exciting place where you don't realize how safe it feels and an environment to create dangerous things with people who are both excited to be a part of it and can relate to your story, you know, and just thrilled to create something that says something that we can all relate to.
And even the way that Celie, you know, had her kid on her own. And that's sort of presented kind of matter of fact. It's not, there's not a big deal made about it. But even just that, the way these people come together to sort of co-parent, even their journey to that was unique and individual to them, which I also so appreciate and always have about this movie, that those things are just woven in and they feel seamless, which is what you want. You want things in a film to make you feel like, right, this is in the world. This is something that's out there, and it's not really, we don't see it presented unless it's made kind of with flashing lights around it often.
It's just startling that there hasn't been a women-led version of this story. Really, it feels like before, you know, because like, I mean, even Mary Shelley, like, you know, I mean, wrote about a man creating his
But you know,
monster,
it was published anonymously at first, and then when she finally did the second publishing, everybody said her husband must have written it.
Yeah.
Of course, you know, but she was like a kid. She was like a teenager who had already gone through so much by the time she was writing this.
And it seems like a fight for life. The entire film is fight for life, fight for your existence. The fact that we've always been here, that we're still here, that we can do things ourselves, and what that means, the significance of it, just the existence of as you said, you know, everything from queer to doctors and scientists and inventors and all of that stuff.
I mean, I would just love to talk about Shudder for a second, because they were phenomenal in working with us on this film. And I've been trying to get this film made for years. And I've gone to many meetings where many people have sat there and said, wow, this is quite a movie. Do you have to say the word placenta so often? Or, you know, a lot of efforts to change the nature of this film. And Emily Gatto specifically, but Shudder, you know, was an amazing partner in supporting the movie and not trying to change what the movie wanted to be.
because it is a different kind of horror movie, and I think in a way, like a true horror movie, in a way that a lot of actual like horror movies are just kind of like genre exercises. I mean, this taps into real feelings, like things that you can relate to and are so deep and are so, you know, frightening and sad, and you know, that's. What do you all hope that people will take away when they watch it?
I hope they take away what we felt about it being there, you know, that exactly what it is, that almost like a real life horror experience. What would you do? What would you do if you want to change history through science? What would you do if not only did you, I can't do it, can I say that? If you lose your child and then you're going to go out of your way to bring them to life? What would you do if you have to come to the same hospital like 15 times? You know, what would you do to check, and given where you came from immediately after that with your fears? That was, in reading the script, that was immediate for me. You know, and if that's what I can bring, that's what I want to see. And it takes you so many different places. You know, I'm only going to do this much. I'm only going to go that much. I'm just going to do that. That's not wrong. The way how you do it, to talk yourself into and out of the horrors that you experience. See what I did there?
You just got it.